Welcome back to the FPL reaction stream, this time looking ahead to Game Week 18, but we still have one more match left of Game Week 17 between Fulham and Nottingham Forest. So we'll see how Anderson and Wilson do tomorrow. I sold Raul Jimenez, so you can expect pretty much the inevitable for him to score, but at least my replacement Ekitike did the business, and my transfers this week did give me some points, but it has been disappointing so far. I am 11 points off from a red arrow, or should I say from a green arrow, so I wouldn't expect to secure a green by the end of tomorrow, but there were some positives. Hincapié getting 10 points was definitely the standout. Robert Sanchez salvaging an assist and getting 4 points against Newcastle, despite Chelsea being 2-0 down, is obviously something quite decent, and you always want to take that sort of jammy goalkeeper assist. But Igor Thiago, a huge disappointment, and that's 4 consecutive blanks there for the Brentford talisman. It was Lewis Potter who got both goals against Wolves. Erling Haaland doing what Erling Haaland does, so captaining him this time has certainly paid off, and for those who triple captain him, of course, you'll be very happy with the outcome. Ekitike got 9 points, and O'Reilly, another one of my signings, secured the clean sheet against West Ham, but Man City do have deficiencies defensively, in my opinion, but they offer so much going forwards, and Foden, who's been brilliant for the last month, did blank for the first time in 5 game weeks, and Bukayo Saka also blanked after a great run for the past 6 match days. So as you can see, very mixed bag, and Bruno Fernandes was subbed off at half-time with an injury. That doesn't look good whatsoever, and I'll be providing the latest updates in terms of what Ruben Amorim said and talking about this throughout all of my videos, and hopefully we get more clarity on this situation by then. Everyone on my bench blanked: Dubravka, Cash, Klein and Potts, who almost scored against Man City, and that was one of the sacrifices I had to make, downgrading Bruno Guimaraes to Potts to fund Ekitike for Raul Jimenez. So I've used a lot of free transfers in the last couple of weeks, so essentially going into Game Week 17 I used 4 moves, and just before that I wildcarded. So I have been very aggressive when it comes to reshaping my team, and there are a lot of short-term picks in here. Once Gabriel is back in the next couple of weeks, Hincapié will be less appealing as an FPL asset, and you look at Nathaniel Klein, the same applies to him when Daniel Munoz returns from his injury, and Potts is only going to be there as a budget option, always third on my bench, but I think at 4.4, both him and Miley offer decent value. And then you look at Bruno Fernandes, the question mark around his fitness. Apart from that, I'm quite happy with the rest of my setup, but that is quite a few short-term punts and also future headaches to have after using all the transfers I did and also wildcarding. So that's where I might have to be patient over the next couple of weeks and save transfers and get back into a position of strength and have 4 or 5 transfers at my disposal, but ideally I wouldn't be using all of them at the same time. Drop a like on this stream, subscribe to the channel, hit the hype button, all that good stuff, and also share the content around with those who love FPL and UCL fantasy. And you can engage even further with my content by joining my Discord server, which is a great community to be a part of, and you get UCL fantasy and FPL updates. The same goes for my Twitter, Instagram and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM. You can also find me by typing FPL Dylan as well, and there's much more headed your way. There's also the FPL and FPL Challenge Leagues, and by the way, I've got over 120 points in FPL Challenge, despite not making a change with Van Heck as my only defender. He didn't feature, so that was a massive shame. I could have got at least an extra 12 points there from a Boscagli or from the other Brighton defender who started, but it is what it is. I'll be covering that very soon. The same goes for predicted points and some stats, talking about defensive contributions and bonus points, covering every single game essentially, and all of your questions as well. So Stadindra says, hey Dylan, currently on 85 points of bench boost. Could have gotten a high score if Senesi kept the clean sheet and Van Heck wasn't out, but we move on. Got Anderson and Wilson tomorrow, hope they haul. 85 points is solid this week, and depending on where you're at, I think it is a green arrow in most situations. Yeah, Van Heck missing out was also disappointing for me from an FPL challenge perspective, but yeah, Broja scoring at the death against Bournemouth was definitely not ideal for you. Senesi was still quite impressive. He created a few chances and managed to secure a decent return, let's say, getting 4 points because of DEFCON, and that's something we have become accustomed to from Marcus Senesi. With your remaining players, I think 90 plus is possible, and I'm hoping at least one return from Anderson or Wilson is on the cards, and that will help both of us in our quest for, well, getting green arrows. In my case, it's kind of out of reach now, but hopefully it builds a solid foundation going into Game Week 18. Thoughts on the Bruno injury? You think he's out for many weeks, and will this impact United's gameplay? It's hard to tell at this moment in time how serious the Bruno Fernandes injury is, and I have been on the lookout, let's say, in terms of the updates. Is he going to be out, and do we have any clarity on the situation? But I'm going to have another look here on Twitter, and hopefully I can have a definitive quote from Ruben Amorim, but I just don't think that's the case. So there is a quote that Fabrizio Romano posted 40 minutes ago. So apparently it is a soft tissue, so it's going to take a while. We have to cope. We will find solutions. So yeah, based on that, the fact that Bruno plays virtually every single minute, for him to be subbed off at half-time, especially in a big game like that, is going to be very telling. Yeah, I think he would miss a couple of games, to be fair, but I didn't expect to have that clarity from Ruben Amorim that early. But yeah, I think Bruno Fernandes could be a sell already, to be quite honest with you. And thankfully I was able to find that tweet and source quite quickly, but yeah, it's not looking good for Man United and Bruno Fernandes there. Hey, bro. Yeah, thank you there, FPL Kevin, for putting this out, because I was late to the party. Seeing what Fabrizio said about Bruno, Amorim's comments, don't wish injury on anyone, but this is fun for FPL, I think, more choices, etc. Well, if only that happened to, look, once again, I don't wish injury on anyone, but I think the one player that an injury, happening would kind of make the game more fun in a way is Erling Haaland, but yeah, I think with Bruno Fernandes, he was kind of the template midfielder pick over Christmas. The same goes for Phil Foden. So this does shake things up a little bit. Some people will go to Antoine Semenyo, others will go to Cole Palmer, and some will use that as a route to go for Bukayo Saka or even Matheus Cunha. So I think that does open up the game a little bit. I get what you're saying there. And he's going to be out for a couple of weeks, it seems. So he's going to miss multiple matches. Looking at the fixtures, etc., I may take a punt on Gordon for Newcastle. And that's what I mean. You just named another example on top of what I said. So it goes to show we have plenty of choices. Maybe not too many standouts, but I think Gordon has been in great form recently. 88 points free hit with Wilson left to play, hoping for a 3-digit end of the game week. Well, that would take 12 points from Wilson, which is doable. But I would temper expectations a little bit with that. 90 plus points is certainly on the cards for you, unless you get some horrible luck. But yeah, if you can get to 100, you will be very happy with that. And that's a great use of the free hit. Thoughts on having both Cherki and Foden on the wild card? Not sure if I want Enzo or Bruno G as well. Well, before the benching against Newcastle, I was quite bullish on Enzo Fernandez, so I was very surprised to see him on the bench. I don't think that will happen too often this season. He is still first choice there for Chelsea. And what we could see in the future is Palmer playing on the right, Neto on the left, and both Garnacho and Esteval on the bench, and they come on as super subs. So that allows Enzo Fernandez to play just behind Joao Pedro, and then Reece James can play alongside Moises Caicedo in the midfield. But yeah, I think on the wild card, for example, I would be more keen on Cherki than Enzo Fernandez at this moment in time, but the same reservations I had before the Game Week 17 deadline still exist. And I think with Man City, the best triple up is Haaland, Foden, and O'Reilly. And you could even argue Gvardiol or another way of covering their defense would be on the cards as well. But instead of Cherki, I prefer Bruno Guimaraes, to be honest. And you've also got plenty of other options, which I've discussed in my videos. Now, Szoboszlai won't be one of them now. He is suspended for Game Week 18 after picking up his 5th yellow card of the season against Tottenham Hotspur. But once he's back from suspension, I'd also prefer Szoboszlai over Cherki. Evening as well, Jared. Good to see you. FPL Kevy says, also finished Game Week on 69 points. My safety is 79. If only I had Captain Haaland. Went with Foden. That was the same situation for me last week, where I captained Thiago, and if I had Captain Haaland, it could have been enough for a green. But yeah, the last 2 weeks have been disappointing. After continuous green arrows and progress, it has been a bit shaky over the past week or so. Yeah, I like Bowen a lot. Before the Game Week 17 deadline, I talked about buying him. And in terms of timing, the best game week to include Bowen would be Game Week 18, actually. So yeah, Bowen is certainly one of the most appealing forwards, considering his form. He should have scored against Man City. He only had one chance and it went just wide. But considering West Ham's upcoming fixtures, I should say, I think Jarrod Bowen would be a solid choice. Waisling says current wildcard: Raya, Dubravka, Timber, Kanate, Chow, Matson, Klein, Morgan Rogers, Wilson, Cherki, Foden, Bruno Guimaraes, Voltemada, Ekitike, Haaland. Well, that's what I mean. A couple of weeks ago, even before the Game Week 17 deadline, I don't think many people would have talked about Voltemada on a wildcard, but that brace was very impressive. He almost scored a hat-trick, and that would have put Newcastle out of sight. There is Vissa, though, knocking on the door, and there are still games where Newcastle could play Anthony Gordon as the false 9 and Harvey Barnes on the left. So Voltemada will start most games for Newcastle, in my opinion, but it's worth bearing that in mind. I like most of your picks. I'm a bit unsure about Konate, but I think Liverpool are worth covering defensively. Van Dijk would still be the standout, but I get why you're doing this. I'm less keen on Maatsen, though. And to be fair, I've got Matty Cash. He's 1 yellow card away from suspension. He made the mistake that resulted in Cunha's goal. But I think with Maatsen, you still have Luka Dean also competing with him quite. I think in most games, they're going to share some minutes. Maatsen is currently first choice. That goes without saying, but I'm less secure and less confident in Maatsen as an asset compared to Cash, who is the nailed-on right back at this moment in time. But good picks overall. Obviously, bear in mind that Klein will be short-term and Daniel Munoz will be back in a couple of weeks' time. The midfield looks really solid. You talked about Cherki and Foden earlier. You know my thoughts on Cherki. Very prolific in terms of goals and assists per minutes, but the minutes themselves are going to be a problem in terms of you get the odd benching. Once Doku is back, I think Cherki will be on the bench in several matches, and even when he does start, he's going to get 60 minutes, sometimes even subbed off before that, so you only get 1 point. So that's my main concern with Cherki. With the rest, though, I don't really have many complaints. Could get Gordon, DCO, and Enzo. I like that trio. Just a few reservations about Enzo at this moment in time, and who would have thought that Calvert-Lewin would score in 5 consecutive games? It's a Christmas miracle, you could argue. Welcome to Stepaki, good to see you. Apparently most soft tissue hamstring injuries can be anywhere between 3 to 8 weeks to heal, depending on the severity. Yeah, it's a massive blow for Man United and for a lot of our FPL teams. Fernandes has been very consistent for me over the past month, and whilst he was underwhelming and quite frustrating at times this season, he was slowly coming to his best and showing that he's one of the best midfielders in the game. But now we have to adapt without him, and this is where there is a great opportunity to go for something a bit different and make up those rank rises. So Wei Seng, for example, will mention Cherki, and I've mentioned plenty of options myself. Obviously, you talked about Anthony Gordon, so there are plenty of choices here, and this could be a nice placeholder for Cole Palmer. But I'll be honest with you, apart from Phil Foden, I'd be gravitating towards Bukayo Saka and Antoine Semenyo right now. So yeah, that covers this question here about the best Bruno replacements. Hopefully you got that. 91 points is very solid, JFT Gunner, and that should be a green arrow quite comfortably for you. Chat, do I play free hit chip now or next week? It depends a lot on your teammate, so let me know who you've got, and I can give you a definitive answer, but I would lean towards Gameweek 18 in some situations. 83 points thanks to Rodgers with Wilson left, only 6 bench boost points. Yeah, I had pretty much the same bench boost score around a month or two ago, and if I'd used it only 3 or 4 game weeks ago, I would have gotten more than 10 points, which is kind of what you're aiming for in a single game week. Bruno injured, have him too. So yeah, best replacements is going to be a common theme, of course, of this stream, and I have talked about this already, and we can refer back to this in a couple of minutes' time, a bit later on when more people join, but essentially that was already talked about. So Bruno is essentially confirmed out by Ruben Amorim, and he gave a very swift response in the press conference. So he's going to be out for a couple of weeks. Yeah, I don't think it was a precaution. It looks like it's quite serious. And Fernandes is the type of player who, yeah, fair enough. You always want to protect your best assets. But I think this was a case that he couldn't continue, and he's going to be out now for some time. FPL Kevy says, also I made an AFCON fantasy team. At least I'll be in the top 100k on that. Yeah, I get it. I've never played AFCON fantasy, to be honest. But I have played the World Cup, the Euros, Club World Cup, and of course UCL fantasy. I have heard good things of AFCON fantasy, and hopefully you enjoy it. It's another headache, you could argue, but also another fantasy game to enjoy, and that's kind of what you want to do with any of these fantasy football games. Bench with Tavernier, Rodon, Dubravka and Van der Ven didn't quite work out, but there is a chance that I might have benched Calvert-Lewin without the bench boost. Now I might need to fix Bruno. I had something similar when I bench boosted and Lacroix got 8 points. If I didn't bench boost, I might have benched Lacroix. Actually, what is more than that? Might have been 11 points, but yeah, Calvert-Lewin has been brilliant recently, and I was close to buying him. In fact, in my team selection podcast, I talked about replacing Raul Jimenez with Calvert-Lewin, and that meant only making, well, it still would have been 4 transfers, I believe. I think, it would have allowed me to keep Bruno Guimaraes. I obviously did Wilson in for Dewsbury Hall early on anyway, so that transfer was confirmed. And it also gave me enough money to buy Nico O'Reilly for Dan Burns. So, yeah, so far, it looks like buying Calvert-Lewin would have worked very well. Let's see if he continues this form, but he has been very impressive. I was actually going to talk about him in a recent transfer tips, but I still am a bit conflicted about it. I'm more leaning towards the camp of buying him, or at least adding him to the watch list, but we all know what Calvert-Lewin can be. He's very streaky, but at the same time, he can go months without scoring. Thiago and Hincapié, Ekitike and Lewis Potter for a -4. As much as I like Ekitike, I'm going to say no here. But Lewis Potter is definitely on radar because in the absence of Dango Ouattara, and I talked about this in the predicted lineup section of my deadline stream, I was very convinced that Lewis Potter would play further forward and then Schade would be shifted to the right-hand side, which is what happened. And there were 2 very good finishes against Wolves from Lewis Potter. So I understand why you're thinking about this, but I wouldn't do this for a -4 hit. Sonindra says, planning to roll my transfer this game. I can use my free hit in Gameweek 19, taking punts from Newcastle, Liverpool, United. I think that makes sense. Rolling in a lot of situations seems ideal going into Christmas, but everyone will have a different situation. But looking at what you're saying here, so you want to focus on those specific teams. I think United with a very plump fixture against Wolves makes sense. Liverpool facing Leeds at home. You would back Liverpool to score a couple of goals there. You might even want Van Dijk or that Liverpool defensive coverage. Even Man City against Sunderland away, maybe that's not as appealing to be fair, but you'd probably still go for a Foden and Haaland if you could. And Newcastle would be another team, obviously, against Burnley. Maybe 1 or 2 assets, a triple up. Could work as well, but yeah, Arsenal against Villa in Gameweek 19, not as appealing as their Brighton at home fixture on paper, but I think both of them won't be necessarily very, very appealing in terms of the Arsenal free hit players. So overall, I get what you're saying here. And the other games are quite evenly matched. Palace against Fulham. You look at West Ham, Brighton. I think that could go either way, actually. Brighton are very inconsistent. Nottingham Forest, Everton. Also another one. I know that Everton beat Forest 3-0 recently, but they will be without a lot of key players, and this time it will be at the City ground. Chelsea against Bournemouth. That's also going to be a tricky game. Quite low scoring in my opinion. But yeah, I see why you're quite appealed by the Gameweek 19 free hit, but I'll be honest with you. I think I'd still lean towards 18 in some situations, but it also depends on the context of your squad. And I think rolling in certain weeks, and in your case, you're looking at a Gameweek 18, I think that does make a lot of sense. Wow, that's a really big score, Sonny. 122 points with bench boost with Wilson and Anderson. Well, 130 is possible, and hopefully you can get to that sort of score, but you're already doing really well. And yeah, there's no need to even talk about green arrows. That is certainly secured. 83 points of Wilson to go. Rodgers is the GOAT. Well, he's a very good player, and this season he has blanked a lot, but when he has produced that sort of return, it's a massive one at that. And over the last month, he has produced 3 of these 15 pointers. So in FPL Challenge, he's going to give me a massive score there, which you're going to see very soon. But yeah, very good score. And Wilson left to play. So if you can get to 90, of course, that'd be great. But it's still going to be a solid week for you as well. Apparently he's out for Newcastle, but not sure beyond. I think it could be more than that. So at least 3 or 4 matches. That's my current reaction. And this is a reaction stream, of course. So maybe this ages horribly, but based on what I've read, I think he's going to be out for a couple of games, not just for the Newcastle one. Changes with the news. Saka to Bruno Guimaraes, Bruno to Cunha, and Thiago to Ekitike. Looks solid. I still like Igor Thiago, but he has been very disappointing over the past 4 game weeks. And Saka is still a solid choice, but I get why you're doing this. It gives you enough money to buy both Cunha and Ekitike, and Bruno Guimaraes is a solid option in the midfield, but I would rather go for Declan Rice, personally. Even though there isn't much separating him and Bruno G, I still think that Rice is better than Guimaraes. Is it essential to have an Arsenal defender? I'd recommend it still. Arsenal have been worse defensively with the injury of Gabriel, but once he's back, I think Arsenal will score more goals from set pieces and they're going to be even more solid defensively. They didn't concede a single goal in the month of October across all competitions, and whilst that's going to be very difficult to maintain over the course of the season, we know how good their defence can be. So I'm not saying you have to have an Arsenal defender, let alone a double or triple up, but I would recommend having at least one, and if there's any team you want to cover defensively, it is Arsenal. Is Gravenberch worth consideration? Need a Liverpool mid, I think. He's worth consideration, yes, because he's a quality option and he plays consistently for Liverpool. He can get DEFCON and he can also score the odd goal here and there like he did against Everton. But I'll be honest, with Liverpool midfielders, Szoboszlai is my favourite, and he's obviously suspended for Gameweek 18, but he's the one I would pick. 76 points, happy with that. Neto and Bruno G let me down, considering I had Stack and Keane on the bench, who got 12 points combined. Bruno G out and Rodgers in, worth a -4 to bring in Gordon for Neto. I wouldn't take the -4 hit for Gordon, as much as I like Newcastle's upcoming fixtures, and it's not just for the next couple, I'm talking about long-term until February. They are near the top of the FDR, which you'll see very soon, but yeah, decent score, pretty solid actually. Some benching pain, but you've got some good squad depth there, which is very important throughout Christmas. I like Bruno Guimaraes, to be honest, but I understand why you're buying Rodgers, and that could be my Bruno Fernandes replacement. Instead of going to Cunha, maybe going to Cole Palmer, or one of these expensive midfielders, I might just settle for a Declan Rice, or in this case, Morgan Rodgers, which is the most likely at this moment in time. But there's also Antoine Semenyo. You obviously mentioned Gordon as well, but I think Rodgers looks really impressive at the moment. Unfortunately, though, the next couple of fixtures are a bit mixed bag for Aston Villa, and they do face Arsenal away in Gameweek 19. Do you think Saka to Palmer in a few weeks is a good shout? Potentially, but with Cole Palmer, we haven't seen enough. Even Chelsea fans are saying that he plays better on the right, and as an attacking midfielder, we're not really seeing the best of him. And Palmer's had a very up and down season because of injury. Bukayo Saka, you could also argue the same thing, but he's shown more consistency, particularly over the past month. So whilst this could change in a couple of weeks, as you say, and maybe that would be a move to do ahead of the curve, at this moment in time, I'd rather have Saka. Sidindra says, would you roll or make any changes for this team? Got one transfer, 0.6 in the bank. I don't think you need to make a transfer necessarily, and maybe in your situation, rolling now, free hitting in 19, and then having 2 transfers in Gameweek 20 is probably the best way to approach it. But yeah, I'm also in a similar position with limited transfers at my disposal. You've obviously got the free hit left. I've got nothing left over in terms of boosters, but yeah, I like the look of your squad. Kevin Schade, by the way, should have scored against Wolves. He had a few opportunities. Some decent saves by Jose Sarr. I think Kevin Schade also could have been a bit better with his chances, but yeah, I do like your other picks. I think they're looking really solid. And you don't have Fernandes, so that's one headache for you to not really worry about. Callion says, Bournemouth are shocking defensively and especially away from home. Their style creates end-to-end games, and Thiago might feast. Post-Bournemouth, Thiago can be a sell with mid-games and his fitness. That's a good point, and Bournemouth have been quite inconsistent for a while, and it's not a huge surprise to see that Antoine Semenyo has also kind of struggled. I know he scored against Burnley and he capitalised on that error by Laurent, but he has really struggled for consistency, and Bournemouth have also struggled as a result to get those wins, and they look much more impressive at this stage last season and also towards the beginning of this campaign, but they were overperforming. Iraola has admitted that himself, and now they're struggling to put games away. Defensively, they're looking shocking. Senesi is still a decent hold for some people who have value tied up in him because of DEFCON, but he's not someone I would invest in new. So I think you make a good point. And even beyond the Bournemouth fixture, Igor Thiago could be worth holding on to, but we've got other forwards now who are starting to look really appealing. Jarrod Bowen, Ekitike, Calvert-Lewin, and that goes beyond Nick Voltemada and the obvious Erling Haaland. Bruno to Rodgers, Thiago to Ekitike. I'm going to say yes to this, even though Thiago is still worth holding in some situations, but I think Ekitike with his recent form and the fixtures looks really promising, and Morgan Rodgers is in incredible form. Just bear in mind that the fixtures aren't great, and there will be a drop-off, I think, especially in games like Arsenal away, on paper at least. Thank you, JFT Gunner. Dylan, you're a legend. We appreciate you, bro. Thank you very much. And I also have to say I appreciate everyone tuning in today in this impromptu reaction stream, you could say. But yeah, usually I do these on Saturday night if possible, and if not, it will be on the Sunday, and it also depends on the fixture schedule, but it's good to see people here. Be sure to like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and join the Discord server, and check all the links in the description. Yo, Dylan, would you sell Thiago or Mateta for Ekitike? I'd still rather keep Thiago, but both of them have been in terrible form. What if it's Szoboszlai playing right back and Frimpong right wing like yesterday? Szoboszlai has gotten some decent returns even at right back, but that would obviously put me off a little bit. I'd rather Szoboszlai play in the midfield or as a right midfielder, which we saw in certain games when Salah was on the bench. But yeah, that's a good point, to be fair. With Liverpool, though, the best asset right now is Ekitike, and then you're looking at Van Dijk. And After that, it becomes a bit more open. I don't think there are many standouts in that Liverpool team. Very early to comment, but is it fair to say Ekitike should be captain for Gameweek 18 rather than Haaland? Something tells me City might not have it as easy as they think away to Forest. Well, the City ground is technically a bit of a bogey stadium for Man City, but over the past couple of years, they have been able to get results there. Forest have missed some big chances, and City end up getting the win. So I think they could struggle, at least on the balance of play, but I would still expect City to win. So you make a great point about the captaincy. This could be a week to go against Haaland. Now, I did that last week when City played Crystal Palace, and that went massively against me because I went for the wrong captain. If it was Bukayo Saka, for example, it wouldn't have been too bad. But yeah, I'm definitely on the same wavelength as you in terms of going for something a bit different, and Ekitike could certainly be one of them. You will see my top 10 captaincy list in future videos. Probably the best, well, I think in the best wildcard team, I'll go through the clean sheet odds, and in my team selection, the top 10 captains will be highlighted. Would you sacrifice Semenyo or Guimaraes this game week, both on 4 yellow cards? I like both of them, to be fair. Semenyo has a higher ceiling, but Bruno Guimaraes might be more consistent in terms of so many routes to points with DEFCON, goals, assists, and bonus. But if I had to pick one to sell, it would be Bruno Guimaraes, personally. Semenyo, Thiago, and Bruno Fernandes to Ekitike, Grealish, and Cunha for a hit if Bruno is out. Not Grealish for me. I think Cunha is okay, and Ekitike is certainly a very appealing forward right now, which is why I bought him going into Game Week 17, but I'm a bit unsure about the other two, particularly Grealish. He's not someone I would go for in FPL right now, and even when he had that purple patch and won the Player of the Month award, I was talking about avoiding Grealish in the long term, and so far, I have been proven correct there. Sell Bruno Fernandes to Ekitike for a hit. It depends on the context. Which player are you buying in the midfield to replace Bruno Fernandes, and which forward are you selling for Ekitike? But on paper, I'm going to say yes. Timber just lost his 1 bonus point. Rest in peace, all of us owning him. Well, that might actually help my rank a little bit because Timber is quite template, but I did have him pre-wildcard, and he is still a solid choice. Probably the best defender in FPL until Munoz and Gabriel return from injury. Mark Gay is also up there, but Palace have been a bit shaky defensively over the past couple of game weeks. So thank you for letting me know. I will be going for the bonus points very soon. Coffee43 says F Timber. Come on, man. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Even though usually you say it the other way around. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go through the FDR. Even Pep makes mistakes, hopefully. And that means City can drop some points. But West Ham are top of the FDR until Game Week 23. And that's why Jared Bowen will be very appealing. Everton, Newcastle, Liverpool and Brentford complete the top 5. And Man City remains 6th, just like they were before Game Week 17. In terms of the bottom 5, there's Wolves, Bournemouth, Aston Villa, Brighton, and Nottingham Forest. With predicted points until Game Week 25, Haaland is top, but we'll focus on the same parameters as the FDR. So that's until Game Week 23 for the next 6 game weeks. So after Haaland, we've got Saka, Cunha, Foden, Bruno Fernandes, Rice, Ekitike, Semenyo, O'Reilly, Kanate. Very interesting top 10 list, and of course, it's heavily influenced by the injuries and the African Cup of Nations. With projected price changes, Wilson could rise yet again to 5.8 million, and Calvert-Lewin, Cherki, Rodgers, Haaland could all rise tonight. And I'll be honest, I'm very tempted to sell Fernandes to Rodgers in the next couple of hours, and that's a real possibility. When it comes to price falls, Eze, Doku, Dango Ouattara, Mbumo, Dewsbury Hall, Esteval, Sells. We've also got a few other options here, Mosquera, Danso, Johnston, Achimpong, Totti Gomez, Bentley, McKenna. All of these players could drop down in price, but not all of them will be necessarily guaranteed. So I did refresh the page, and yeah, Rodgers is now the most likely to rise in price. We've also got Cunha in here and Ballard. I'm also going to compare the stats of 2 very different forwards, probably 2 of the most in form right now. Calvert-Lewin has scored in 5 consecutive games, and Ekitike has 5 goals over the past 3 game weeks. But if you look at this, their stats are identical in terms of appearances, goals and assists, but Ekitike has 1 more for the season. In terms of shots, it's also identical, but Calvert-Lewin has 2 more shots and 6 more shots on target. When it comes to shots in the box, Calvert-Lewin also leads, and bear in mind, he only costs 5.7 million. He is going to rise in price, of course, tonight. Ekitike is 3 million more expensive. But the XG is solid for both. I think Calvert-Lewin is definitely more impressive. And when it comes to creativity, they're both not really going to offer much. But Calvert-Lewin also leads in those metrics. And with big chances, They both have 9, but if it's me personally, I would still go for Ekitike. And he could be a great captaincy option against Wolves at home, which one of the viewers rightfully pointed out. That could be a great opportunity to go against Erling Haaland, who faces Nottingham Forest away from home. But it's always difficult to back against the robot, particularly in the form that he's in. And FPL.team is a great resource here. This is my provisional squad for Game Week 18. And if Bruno Fernandes wasn't injured, I would have been very happy to roll. And this is where it's very important sometimes to roll when possible. And in my case, I've only got 2 transfers at my disposal now. And I think Fernandes will make way for one of Antoine Semenyo, Morgan Rogers. Declan Rice is still an option, but I've already got Saka in the midfield. And I'm not going to go to Cole Palmer. I don't have enough money there. Only 0.1 in the bank with Bruno Fernandes in the team. So it's very likely I'll go for a cheaper option. And with Semenyo, the expected points is 51.2. And if we go to Morgan Rogers, it's 50.2 as he faces Chelsea away. But Aston Villa don't have great fixtures. If we go back to the FDR and focus on them, because Rogers will be very appealing right now, they are in the bottom 3, which I highlighted earlier. So yeah, the next 2 fixtures don't look great for them. But then it's Nottingham Forest, Crystal Palace away, Everton at home, Newcastle away. And the way Rogers is playing, he is fixture-proof and he could haul against any of those teams. But on paper, the next 2 aren't as likely. And with FPL Challenge, you might be thinking, how do I have 120 points? Well, it currently says 114 because Rogers and his bonus points haven't been added yet, per se. But I forgot to even change Van Heck. And if I went to Boscagli or any Brian defender who started, it would have been another 12 points at least. And that would have been obviously very handy. But I went for David Raya as my only goalkeeper. Well, you can only pick one goalkeeper, of course. But despite him not having a home fixture, I thought that Arsenal were still right up there for the clean sheet odds. I captained Haaland, so nothing spectacular there. Antoine Semenyo scored, got 10 points, 20 overall. And Rogers will have 15 points as his baseline score. And that will be 30 overall in FPL Challenge. And I've got Wilson left to play against Nottingham Forest at home. And that's still a very good return there. But 3 players have essentially carried my FPL Challenge squad this week. So, should we even go through how horrendous my scoreline predictions are? Yeah, why not? It's a bit of fun. So, this is the scoreline predictions, as you can see. So, Newcastle 2, Chelsea 1. In the end, it was 2-2. And I will be going through every single game in terms of bonus points and DEFCON very shortly. I went for Bournemouth 2, Burnley 0. It ended up being 1-1. Brighton 1, Sunderland 1. So, correct result, but not the correct scoreline. Man City 4, West Ham 0. Not too shabby, but it was a 3-0 win for City. And I went for 2-2 Wolves-Brentford, but Wolves are even worse than I thought. And Brentford left it late, but Lewis Potter made the difference. Liverpool 3, Tottenham 1 isn't too shabby, but it was a 2-1 win for Liverpool against 9 men Tottenham Hotspur. Everton 1, Arsenal 1. So, yeah, I was cautiously optimistic, would I say? Maybe not. I just had a feeling Everton could be a very tough game, and it was for Arsenal, but I think they controlled the match relatively well. They should have won by more, and in the end, Arsenal got the job done. Leeds 1, Crystal Palace 2. How wrong I was about this one. A 4-1 win for Leeds, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin continues to deliver. Aston Villa, of course, just beat Man United 2-1. I went for a 1-0. And early in the season, I was kind of averaging 2 or 3 correct scoreline predictions every single game week, but that hasn't been the case this time round. And for tomorrow, I've gone for 1-1 between Fulham and Nottingham Forest, so we'll see how wrong I am about that scoreline prediction as well. But let's go to FPL. Yeah, just go to the points and see how things are here. So, let's start off with the early kickoff between Newcastle and Chelsea. So the bonus points were awarded to Voltemada, Gordon and Joao Pedro in that order. And in terms of defensive contributions, Lewis Miley, Tonali, Lewis Hall, Caicedo and Chalobah all secured DEFCON. In the Bournemouth game against Burnley, which ended 1-1, the bonus points went to Antoine Semenyo, Broja and Troffert. And DEFCON was awarded to Senesi, Troffert, Cook, Laurent, Ekdal. They are the only players to have secured DEFCON. Quite a few, though, to be fair. In the goalless draw between Brighton and Sunderland, the bonus points went to Verbruggen, Ballard, and Boscagli, and also Hume, to be fair. So a lot of players shared 2 bonus points in the process. When it comes to DEFCON, Coppola, Hume, Ballard were the only players to get DEFCON. And unsurprisingly, Haaland got maximum bonus points against West Ham. Matheus Nunes got 2, and Cherki got 1 bonus point. With DEFCON, only Walker Peters secured that. And bear in mind, for defenders, they only need 10 defensive actions, so clearances, blocks, interceptions, and tackles. When it comes to midfielders and forwards, they need 12 defensive actions. In Brentford's 2-0 win against Wolves, the bonus points went to Lewis Potter, Kelleher, and Janelt. And with DEFCON, Santiago Bueno, Hoover, Janelt, Yarmoliuk, Collins, and Vandenberg all secured DEFCON. And in the Liverpool game, the bonus points went to Florian Wirtz and Ekitike. They both shared 3. And Alexander Isak, who was subbed off due to an injury, got 1. And he could be out for several weeks, which only boosts Ekitike's appeal. With defensive contributions, Romero, who was sent off, was able to get 15 defensive actions. Bentancur, and that's it. That's everyone else didn't secure DEFCON there. Archie Gray was very close, though. And in Arsenal's 1-0 win over Everton, which saw them stay top over Christmas, Declan Rice got 3 bonus points courtesy of his assist, Hincapié got 2, and David Raya got 1 bonus point. And DEFCON was awarded to Keane, Garner, Irig Bonham, Tarkowski, Declan Rice, and Hincapié. So only 2 matches left to analyse or to go through the stats with. Calvert-Lewin got maximum bonus points, Ampadu got 2, and Stack was awarded 1. With DEFCON, Ampadu, Strauch, and Lacroix, Richards, Wharton, Gay, they were the players who got DEFCON there as well. And last but not least, Aston Villa 2, Man United 1. So Rodgers got 3 bonus points, Cunha got 2, and Dorgu was awarded 1 bonus point. And in terms of defensive contributions, Onana was the only Aston Villa player to secure that. And for Man United, only Aidan Heaven was able to get those 2 additional points. So let's just go to FPL Challenge one more time, because I think by this point, Morgan Rodgers and the bonus points have been added. So yeah, I'm actually up to 121 bonus points. I wish. Imagine I got 121 bonus points. That's the amount of points I've got for FPL Challenge. So I'm going to just quickly modify that. But of course, I've got Wilson left to play tomorrow. And I will go through your questions and comments, of course, and make sure everyone is answered. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the festivities, the Christmas period, of course. Only a couple of days left until the big day. And yeah, the new year as well, going into 2026 with more FPL and UCL fantasy content headed your way. So let's adjust this, because somehow it's even better than I thought. Okay. Yeah, I think that should be good. Okay, so just going to adjust this and then go back to your questions and also my FPL team, which unfortunately pales in comparison to FPL Challenge, but it is what it is, right? These things can happen. Okay. Let's now go back to the FPL team. And unfortunately, I don't have Rodgers in this squad, but maybe very soon he will be in it to replace the injured Bruno Fernandes. Free transfers, 1 million in the bank. Petrovic to Pickford or Alisson. Long term, I'd rather go for Pickford. Alisson is too injury prone for a goalkeeper. Pickford will score more points. He's also a little bit cheaper. And do you think Palmer is fit for Boxing Day? Well, it isn't a guarantee with Cole Palmer. I will read out the latest quote just so you have a bit more information rather than just my guess, which is going to be unreliable. But yeah, I think Cole Palmer will be available. I mean, he's currently not yellow flagged in FPL anyway. But yeah, I think Palmer will be fit. His minutes could be managed, though. I wouldn't expect him to get 90 minutes per se. And I think we could see a rotation in that Chelsea attack. Start Minter or Rodon? Not a easy one here, but I'd still lean towards Minter, who has been very disappointing now for a month or two. Would you buy Rice for Bruno Fernandes? Yeah, he's one of the top contenders for me. I think in many situations, Rice is a great replacement. So yeah, replacement for Bruno, I covered this many times in this stream. So I think Foden and Saka will be the standouts, and beyond that, there is Cole Palmer, which is a bit riskier, especially in terms of the minutes, but Antoine Semenyo, Gordon, Rodgers would all be up there. If I'm ranking them, it would be Foden first, Saka second, probably Rodgers third, and Semenyo fourth. But Bournemouth have better immediate fixtures than Aston Villa, so in terms of timing, you could certainly make a case for Semenyo, but he is one yellow card away from suspension. So in fifth place, I think Declan Rice would actually be the one who pips it over Anthony Gordon as well, and I think Rice is a season-long hold. Raya to Verbruggen and Thiago to Ekitike, not for me. And Verbruggen was a bit shaky actually against Sunderland. He did get maximum bonus points in the end, but I still would rather have that Arsenal defensive coverage, and maybe you've got Hincapié or Timber already, which is fair enough, but look, I love the Thiago to Ekitike move. I almost made it last week, but instead I sold Raul Jimenez. I'm just a bit unsure about selling Raya to Verbruggen, and with goalkeeper transfers, I'd rather avoid them when possible. Sell Bruno for Wirtz. Well, Wirtz, someone told me this yesterday. I think it was Bernardo Deception, I think it was. He said that Wirtz has been in good form recently. He's been improving, and obviously he got maximum bonus points yesterday and got the assist, but look, it's not a horrible shout. I think Wirtz is a quality player. In UCL Fantasy, I bigged him up many times over the years, but I'd still rather go to the other midfielders I mentioned. Gale says Raya, Dubravka, O'Reilly, Senesi, Lacroix, Cucurella, Mukiele, Foden, Saka, Wirtz, Rice, Dewsbury Hall, Haaland, Thiago, Calvert-Lewin is the current squad. Free hit now or next week? Interesting. So I don't know how many transfers you got, but if you got plenty, I would be tempted to use some of them now because, for example, Dewsbury Hall could go down in price tonight and you might want to get rid of him. The counter argument to that, though, is he could be available for Gameweek 19. And even for the upcoming deadline, it's possible that he does make it for the Boxing Day fixture. Well, I mean, most of them will take place on the 27th, right? But yeah, I think in your situation, I would probably free hit now and then use transfers afterwards. And by that point, Dewsbury Hall could be available. You might lose a bit of value tied up in him, but he could still be a decent fifth midfielder and eighth attacker. Palmer miss, very questionable, and they have tons of fixtures, says Twisted Parky. Bruno out, Palmer and Rice in maybe. Oh yeah, selling Saka as well. Yeah, I think Palmer is a massive risk, and sometimes you need to take them in FPL and take a leap of faith, but I would be slightly concerned about that. I think Declan Rice is a great option. I have no concerns about that pick, but with Cole Palmer, the minutes is going to be very, very insecure and all over the place, but you've got a good squad, despite a few issues here and there. Gordon to Rodgers or Cunha. I would probably go to Rodgers. And yeah, I'm guessing that's your Bruno Fernandes replacement, so that makes sense. Owning DCL has been pretty fun at the moment. So few interested, but it will tail off. Yes, his ownership is still 6 to 7%. He's going to probably reach double figures going into Gameweek 18, and that's where he'll probably disappoint people, but he has been very impressive so far. Bruno to Wirtz, 7% owned with two of the best fixtures coming up, already got Ekitike. I'm not completely against that now. I think what we saw from Wirtz against Tottenham was very encouraging, and maybe, you know, the viewers from yesterday were right and I was wrong because I was not really too keen. And obviously the red cards to Tottenham impacted the game massively, but yeah, Wirtz is a quality player. It's about unlocking, you know, his best attributes, which is in the final third, getting those goals and assists quite regularly. But yeah, I think that's a decent replacement on paper. You also get a bit of money, extra funds there to spend in other areas. 120k overall and still got the wild card left. 2 free transfers. The team is Verbruggen, Dubravka, Timber, Van Dijk, Cucurella, O'Reilly, Mukiele, Saka, Semenyo, Rice, Foden, Tavernier, Haaland, Thiago, Guiu. Good squad overall. My main concerns would be Verbruggen in the long term, but he is a cheap goalkeeper and he will give you some big returns from time to time, as we saw in Gameweek 17. I think the forward line is my main issue, actually, and Tavernier is only a short-term punt. I think the most appealing fixture for him was Burnley at home, and he blanked in that game. But yeah, Haaland and Thiago, really good, especially Haaland, of course, but there are some doubts now about Thiago following his 4th consecutive blank, and Mark Guiu is simply a enabler and 8th attacker who you're not going to start in most weeks, and ideally you would probably never start him. So Yeah, good squad overall, but I would have a few concerns there, mainly with Guiu and Tavernier. I would try to upgrade one of them at least. Do you think I use the wildcard now or in 19, mate? Love the content. Thank you very much. I don't know your squad, which would make it a bit easier to give a definitive answer, but I would lean towards using it now because Bruno Fernandes, if you've got him, for example, he's injured. He's probably going to miss a couple of weeks. You can be one step ahead of the curve, get your ideal replacement, and also reshape your squad to your liking. But maybe you like your team for Game Week 18, and then for 19 it's different. There are fixture swings you want to kind of target, and that's where things can get interesting. But for example, wildcarding now could enable you to get 2 or 3 Liverpool players, including Ekitike, restructuring your squad in general, and that could be, involving the Bruno Fernandes sale. So that's why I think the wildcard in 18 looks very appealing for a lot of people now. Twister Parky says, hey, anyone playing AFCON? I missed the deadline, had an awful last 3 weeks personally. With both AFCONs, does anyone know if I can join after today's match rather than waiting until match day 2? So joining AFCON in match day 2 makes the game pointless for me. So hopefully someone can answer Twisted Parky, and usually I'm the one covering all these different fantasy games, but I'm not playing AFCON. I need a bit of a break probably. FPL and UCL Fantasy is already enough of a headache, if you will, but a fun one at that. So yeah, good luck to everyone playing AFCON. Enjoy it, and the same goes for the festivities as well. Would you get Cash, O'Reilly, or any Palace defender on wildcard? Probably O'Reilly at this moment in time, but in terms of the best Palace defender, it is Mark Gay until Munoz is back from injury. And as a short-term punt, Nathaniel Klein at 3.8 offers decent value, but so far it's been horrible, and he even got subbed off early, so we could even see Borna Sosa start in Game Week 18. So yeah, for Palace, just keep it simple and go for Mark Gay until Munoz is back, but right now I would pick O'Reilly. Hi Dylan, 87 points, and that's all. Still a very good score. Transfer out Verbruggen and Voltemada was bad idea. Ekitike and Rye gave me some points. Yeah, a bit unlucky with the way things turned out. So the players you bought in did their job. They got good returns, but unfortunately the players you sold were even better this week. But I think long-term, Ekitike and Rye is a better duo. Cherky 4 points and my bad idea to put Minter instead of Rice. That is a massive swing, to be fair, and based on the fixture, you probably would have favoured Minter, but yeah, Sunderland have been very solid this season, and Declan Rice has been phenomenal for Arsenal. He was the best player for the Gunners once again yesterday, and he's going to be pivotal in the title race. What do you think about Semenyo? My main issue with Semenyo is the fact that he's 1 yellow card away from suspension, but once Bournemouth have played the 19th game, that will no longer be an issue because the threshold increases from 5 to 10 yellow cards by the time that Bournemouth have played their 32nd game. But I do like Semenyo. He is one of my top replacements for Bruno Fernandes, and it's between him, Rodgers, Declan Rice. I think, yeah, it's probably those 3 who are the main contenders to replace Fernandes for me. I bench Voltemada. I'm sure you had your reasons. I'm not going to come here and say, oh, you were wrong, because in some cases it was understandable. I think yesterday I was asked many questions about Voltemada, and whilst in most situations I recommended starting him, there were a few where I talked about benching him, and people would not be happy with me, but these things can happen, right? And no one expected him to score a brace, almost a hat-trick against Chelsea. Well, Cunha is another option, but yeah, I think Rice, Rodgers, or Semenyo is more likely. Rodgers will cook Chelsea. Well, Chelsea were shambolic defensively, and also very fortunate not to concede a penalty, the one that Chalobah did on Anthony Gordon. But yeah, Rodgers has been really solid. I think the fact is at Stamford Bridge, I think Chelsea will get a result, maybe a draw, but I think Aston Villa's winning streak comes to an end. Zara says, I have Rice. Yeah, he's been brilliant. And, last week I had Saka over Rice, and that paid off. Also, Hincapié over Timber's been brilliant for me. But, yeah, this week it kind of switched when it comes to the Rice versus Saka debate. And long-term, Rice offers better value, that's for sure. Any clue how long Welbeck will be out for? Well, I was asked about him in my deadline stream, and I read out the quote by Ursula. I'm not sure if he provided more clarity or any updates since then. I will have a look now, but I wouldn't count on it. But yeah, I'm just going to read out the same quote again. Ursula said on December the 19th, so 2 days ago, there's uncertainty about his ability to start the upcoming game, but definitely the issue is not healed yet, and he is still restricted during the training week. The team has a strong leadership group who could potentially step up as captain if Danny is unavailable. So I don't think it's a long-term problem, but in terms of his ability to start games consistently and get those kind of 70, 80 minutes you want, I would be very concerned about that, which is why in my predicted lineup, I went for Jorginho Rata up front and Gruda just behind him. But Palmer will show Villa class as well. We shall see. Went early with Saka plus Guiu to Wirtz and Bowen, and now Fernandes is injured, so no bench now. Am I cooked? Well, look, that's why sometimes making early transfers can backfire. And if you could have made the same moves whilst keeping Saka and selling Fernandes instead, that's where the regret could come in. But I wouldn't say you're cooked, especially if you have a decent bench option. And it could be a defender, which isn't ideal, but that's better than being down to 10 men or having a horrendous pick like Guiu starting for you. But of course, you're selling Guiu anyway. So I wouldn't say you're cooked, but my advice to people is always to hold out as long as possible. I get making early transfers. I might even make one tonight, but yeah, for example, when you've got like this game between United and Villa, and let's say, for example, there was no risk of certain players going up or down in price, which affected your team value, I think the best thing to do is wait and have that extra information, because no one expected this Fernandes injury, and it's very rare for him to even pick up these problems, but it happened, and now we have to adapt. Okay, so for everyone who has chips remaining, as I talked about in my deadline stream, you have to use all your remaining chips before the Gameweek 19 deadline. So you've got Gameweek 18 now, that's the next match day coming up, and then you've got one more opportunity. But once the Gameweek 19 deadline passes, which is going to be on the 30th of December, that's it. You cannot use any chips from the first half of the season. They will be essentially burned, actually. What do you think of Frimpong short-term punt next to? Szoboszlai suspended for 1, Bradley injured. Yeah, also Joe Gomez is, I think, currently injured as well. So that is definitely a decent short-term punt, but I'll be honest, I would only do that if you're in a position of strength when it comes to transfers. If you have like 4 or 5 available moves, then that could work very well. And you can use Frimpong as a placeholder for Gabriel or Daniel Munoz, and I think both of them will be very appealing over the coming weeks. But yeah, I'm on board with it. I'm not a massive fan of Liverpool defensively, and I think Van Dijk is the best option they have because of DEFCON, but Frimpong has that attacking threat, and against Wolves in particular, he could thrive for sure. Dryhill says, what do you think of these transfers? Saka, Semenyo, Thiago and Raya, maybe to Rice, Rodgers, Ekitike and Pickford. 95 points so far, triple captain Haaland with Wilson to play. Thank you, much appreciated. Yeah, great score. Obviously triple captain success there, which is unsurprising. In terms of the transfers though, I like the players you're bringing in. My concern though is you're selling some very good assets, and I don't see a massive difference between the 4 players you're selling compared to the ones you're buying. If anything, I still like the quartet you've got. So I'm not too sure about this. What I would consider is Saka to Rice and then buying Ekitike for Thiago. But I think with the others, I'd keep things as they are, to be honest with you. I had considered DCL out and Saka out for Ekitike and Rice, but with Bruno unavailable, I can't now. That's what I mean. Our plans can always be abrupted and, well, it can always be halted abruptly, and you've got to adapt and change your plans a little bit, but it's always good to have plans. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have plans. It's always good to look further ahead, use FPL.team and all these websites, but yeah, we always have these spanners in the works, and that's what makes FPL interesting and very challenging at times. But yeah, with Bruno Fernandes, people are asking me about the updates. I covered this already. Ruben Amorim essentially said he's got a soft tissue injury, so he could be out for a couple of weeks, it seems, and he said that United have to adapt and find solutions. Thank you, Sidindra. Thanks for your help, Dylan. Take care, Merry Christmas, and have a great one with your family. Likewise to you. I am aware that Szoboszlai is suspended. I've mentioned this every time I've talked about him, and that's why for Liverpool, I think the standout players are Ekitike and probably Van Dijk. But as a short-term punt, people have rightfully mentioned Frimpong and Florian Wirtz could also be of interest, especially as a Bruno Fernandes replacement. But once Szoboszlai is back from suspension in Gameweek 19, I would prefer him over Florian Wirtz long-term. Fernandes going off injured made my day. Sick of getting blasted by him. That's a bit crazy, Andrew Barton, but you are a member and a long-time viewer of the channel, so yeah, let's just pretend you never said that. Reaction tonight has worked better than yesterday. A long day of football, and today we have to think about Bruno. Yeah, to be honest with you, I think people generally prefer this Saturday night reaction streams, and I also like them as well, but the schedule this season has been a bit awkward. So you've got 1 or 2 matches happening at 8 PM. Obviously, yesterday we had 2 of them, and it makes doing a reaction stream a bit challenging, especially, you know, I'm going to be heavily invested in the Arsenal game and I want to actually answer people's questions. So to do both, watch the game and answer people's questions, it's going to be very challenging to say the least. And we don't even have all the information. And obviously we've got that Bruno Fernandes injury, which is going to rock a lot of FPL teams about. Welcome, Anish. Good to see you. Riffs, Van Dijk, Timber, Anderson, Chalobah, Bruno Fernandes, Foden, Saka, Wilson, Ekitike, Haaland, with Dubravka, Richards, Guiu, Dewsbury Hall on the bench. Used my free transfer yesterday to do Semenyo to Bruno, 1.5 million. Hit. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's a bit it is very disappointing and unlucky, but that's why making early transfers can backfire. I think what I'd do in your situation is not take the hit just yet and sell Bruno Fernandes in Gameweek 19. The only downside to it is you might miss out on some opportunities like Antoine Semenyo, maybe Declan Rice, and all these different midfielders I've mentioned, Anthony Gordon, Rodgers, etc. But yeah, I think avoiding the hit, just starting a Dewsbury Hall, for example, who could be available by that stage, I think that is probably what I'd recommend. Having said that, if Dewsbury Hall is still out and you're down to Richards or Guiu replacing Bruno Fernandes, then you have to take the -4 hit in that situation. So yeah, put Dewsbury Hall first on your bench and see if he's available. But if not, I would sell Bruno Fernandes to one of Antoine Semenyo, Rodgers, or Declan Rice. With Thiago, do you think Gameweek 18 might be the last chance for him? Tempted to bring in a cheaper striker for the bench and use the funds on another midfielder and get ready for Gabriel returning? Great question, and that's something that is crossing my mind. Thiago to Calvert-Lewin and then having enough funds to buy Gabriel is certainly appealing. And not just that, it could be Gabriel replacing Hincapié, and I can also buy Daniel Munoz with those extra funds. So very good shout, and I think it's something we should be definitely eyeing up. And there's also other possibilities like Jeroboam and Ekitike if you're willing to spend more money in the forward line. But yeah, I think that's definitely a very good sort of strategy to downgrade Thiago and be able to spend more funds in the midfield and defensive line. Welcome, Barra. 104 points is very impressive. Top 10k is a really good rank as well. I know he might be a bit longer away on Gabriel coming back though. Well, several reports indicate he will be back at the turn of the year, so within the next 2 or 3 weeks we could see Gabriel starting games again, but Arsenal cannot rush him. He is so important to the Gunners, and we have seen how much they've missed him defensively and also from set pieces. Hi Dylan, can you rank the following mids as potential Bruno replacements based on form and fixtures over the next 3? If we're only talking about the next 3 fixtures, then I would say Cunha is probably first. I'd say Rice second, and it's probably the way you've ordered it. However, if I'm looking longer term, then I would say Rice is probably the best one. Rodgers is second. Cunha is just about third, and Gordon fourth. That would be my definitive ranking, not just looking at the next 3, but also beyond that. So that's going to be my answer. I think Rice is the best overall. Yeah, Bruno is injured, as covered earlier. Rodgers has tough fixtures coming up. Exactly that. And he's facing Chelsea and Arsenal away. As good as he is, the ceiling on paper isn't going to be as high as we saw against Leeds, Man United, and West Ham. But Rodgers is certainly the best Aston Villa asset, that's for sure. Yeah, I think Bruno will definitely be out Aranya. Yeah. Already my midfielders is Minter, Rice, Bruno Fernandes, Cherki, and Semenyo. For me, Bruno Fernandes injured and Semenyo should be transferred out. I don't agree with the Semenyo one. He's still available. Yes, he's got that suspension risk hanging over him, but your only concern right now should be Bruno Fernandes. One idea is Rodgers, obviously, but second mid, I have no idea. Well, you've got Rice already, which is fine. I like Bruno Guimaraes, but he's another suspension risk, and he's not someone I'd rush in to buy per se. I'll be honest with you, you just need to sell Bruno Fernandes, and the one player that you don't have is Foden, who I really recommend despite the blank against Leeds. Sorry, against Leeds. The blank against West Ham. So yeah, Fernandes to Foden is what I'd recommend. And if you still want to sell Semenyo, the likes of Cunha could also be of interest, Anthony Gordon, but I don't think you need to make that transfer, and Semenyo is better than both of them. I can't tell you definitively when Bruno's back. We don't know how long he's going to be out for, but based on what Amram said, I would expect him to be unavailable for a couple of weeks. Would you go Palmer if you had the cash? I'd be very tempted, but probably not because of the minutes. If he was starting regularly and getting 80 to 90 minutes per game, then yes, I would just take the plunge because of the quality of player he is, and it's an opportunity to go for him when he has low effective ownership. But I think at this moment, I'd rather just go for Rice, Rodgers, or Semenyo. And based on timing, I might lean towards a Rice or Semenyo instead. I was thinking of bringing in Gravenberch. Yeah, this was covered earlier about Gravenberch. He's a decent option at his price tag. I just prefer Ekitike to cover the Liverpool attack. You've also got Szoboszlai when he's back from suspension in Gameweek 19. I think he's better than Gravenberch. And some people are rightfully putting out Florian Wirtz. But I think with Liverpool, it's Ekitike and one of Van Dijk. Well, probably just that, actually. Frimpong as a short-term punt could work. But I think Van Dijk is still the best defender there. Senesi and Timber dropped out of bonus points and have dropped rank. That's the issue I have with the bonus point system, because they can make changes based on matches that happened 1 or 2 days ago. The problem with that is, for example, we've got Forest versus Fulham tomorrow. If there are changes to DEFCON and, you know, bonus points, I mean, essentially we won't get that because of the timing. So the last game of a game week is not going to have those kind of adjustments as you would with all the other matches. And that's where you get inconsistencies and ranks can be determined by these late changes. That's something I don't like about FPL, and hopefully they change it next season. But I think more people need to make noise about it so they're aware of the issue. Would you suggest taking a -4 hit to have Ekitike? Depends who you're selling. I like Ekitike a lot. I think he might be one of the best captaincy options against Wolves at home. So I'd be inclined to buy him in, even for a hit, but it depends on the circumstances. If you're selling Thiago to Ekitike for a hit, I'm going to say no. Hey Dylan, hope you've had a good weekend. Big week for myself. Thank you, Harrison James. The same goes to you. Triple Captain Haaland, 101 points. Really solid. Wilson still to play. FPL challenge, same as you. Bar Verbruggen in goal and Tarkowski defender. Well, that's slightly better than me, actually. Verbruggen got a massive return. At least Tarkowski played. Yeah, with Van Heck, I did mess up a little bit there, but essentially, whenever I've done my FPL challenge team, I haven't gone back to it and adjusted based on the lineups, which is something I should do. I would have been able to gain at least 12 more points as a result. On 114 in challenge, so would fall just short of your score. Yeah, but I'm still disappointed by the Van Heck omission, but it is what it is, right? It's still good scores for us, but we always want more. Thanks for telling me to choose Rodgers and Ekitike over Shard and Tavernier on my free hit 11. No worries there. I'm glad that I gave some good advice and it actually resulted in some massive points gained. Bruno Fernandes and Thiago for Rice and Bowen. I'm going to say yes. As much as I like Thiago, I think it makes a lot of sense to make this sort of upgrade, and Bowen has great fixtures and West Ham are top of the FDR for the next 6 game weeks. What about Cunha or Wirtz for Bruno? This is a close one. I would lean towards Cunha, but I am warming up to Wirtz. I mean, it's still going to take time because he literally went double 16 or whatever you want to say, double 16. Yeah, I'm probably butchering that, but you get my point. I think with Wirtz, quality player, but it hasn't really worked out for him at Liverpool so far, but we all know the quality that he possesses. Yeah, I think Cunha would be the preference though. Yeah, definitely an option. I am considering Cunha, but I think long-term Rice is better. Bench Senesi or Richards next game week. Not a massive fan of either, to be quite frank, but I think next week I would go for... I think Senesi. To be fair, Bournemouth have been shambolic away from home. You would expect Brentford to score. Very close one. I think Senesi's more likely to get DEFCON. In terms of goal threat and assist threat, Senesi's probably a bit more likely as well. Oddly enough, when it comes to clean sheet potential, Richards has the edge. But I'm going to say Senesi. Miley or Potts for cheap midfielder option once I bring in Ekitike. I had the same dilemma as you going into Gameweek 17. I went for Potts. He almost scored against Man City. I think Miley is looking very impressive recently. He played at right back, of course, against Chelsea, and we'll see him play or start plenty of games in the midfield. But I'm going to say Potts just about. There's not really a massive difference, though. Sell Thiago or Jimenez for Ekitike. It would be Jimenez out for me. He'll probably score tomorrow. We all know how this is going to end. My team is closest to yours. Free hit 18 or 19. Last chance, right? Yeah, 19 is your last chance. You have to do it before the Gameweek 19 deadline. I'd probably say Gameweek 18, but there's not much in it, in my opinion. Virgil worth owning for Liverpool's games against Wolves and Leeds? Yes. If you have Virgil van Dijk, definitely keep him. In terms of buying him in, it's a bit awkward just because in a couple of weeks' time, you might want to sell him to Gabriel or Munoz when they're back, but I think it makes sense to have Van Dijk for the next two. Yeah. Forgot to mention in my last comment, planning to use bench boost in Game Week 18, hence my 4 transfers. Yeah, makes sense. I think if you're using a chip like the bench boost, it makes sense to use multiple moves to bolster your 50-man squad, so I get that. Hi Dylan, thoughts on Burn to Tarkowski, Saka to Rice and Thiago to Ekitike, have Bruno but have to take a -4. Who do you think is the best option? I'll be honest, I would keep Saka if you can and sell Bruno Fernandes instead, and if it means taking a -4, so be it, but I'd rather keep Saka and sell Fernandes, who's going to be out for a couple of weeks, it seems. Now, no matter what you're doing, my advice is to kind of wait, because you never know. Things can change a little bit. Fernandes is only out for 1 week, whatever it is, but it's extremely unlikely at this moment in time, and I think he will miss plenty of matches. But yeah, I like the transfers in. So Rice and Ekitike. I'm less sure about Tarkowski, and even short term, I think Keane is better, but I just wouldn't go for Tarkowski personally. I just reconsider it and maybe keep Saka and sell Fernandes instead. Best midfielder under 6 million. Elliot Anderson is up there. Granit Xhaka is still decent. Caicedo will get Defcon. So those 3 would be the main standouts. And until Doku is back, I think Reinders will start plenty of matches for Man City and he'll be a solid choice. He's gotten a few returns recently, much to my dismay. But yeah, I think those are the standouts. And if I had to pick, it's probably Elliot Anderson, but it's not by much. I think Bruno will be out for more than 1 game week, yes. Based on the information we have, Ruben Amorim said it's a soft tissue issue. So I think it's going to be a couple of weeks, really, based on that information. Thoughts on cash to Lewis, Potter, or roll and start Joachim Andersen? I'd probably roll and start Joachim Andersen, but Lewis Potter looks very appealing, playing further forward in the absence of Dango Ouattara, which is something I talked about in my predicted lineup section. I'm going to sell Bruno Fernandes, that's the plan. Will Foden become a fraud again? Well, he just returned in 4 consecutive games, so I think he deserves a bit of, well, we should cut him a bit of slack. At least I'm saying that because I had him on the free hit, and then I bought him in, and things went hunky-dory for a couple of weeks. But, yeah, it's possible. Foden has been very poor all season until we got to November, essentially. And now we're seeing the best of him. But, yeah, only time will tell. I think Foden will be very consistent, and he might be the best Bruno Fernandes replacement for a lot of people. Bruno Fernandes and Thiago to Bruno G and Ekitike? Yes, would be my answer. Agustin Orafino says Donnarumma, Hincapié, Calafiori, Virgil, Wirtz, Palmer, Rice, Wilson, Lefebvre, Haaland, Ekitike, Dubravka, Thiago, Mukiele y Heaven. Pensaba hacer el free hit en 19, pero la lesión de Bruno hizo que lo adelante una fecha. Creo que no haya mucha diferencia entre el free hit entre la jornada 18 y 19, pero creo que en tu caso es mejor usarlo en la jornada 18, así que estoy de acuerdo con tu pensamiento y creo que es la mejor decisión para tu equipo. What's a good, I was going to say motherfucker, yeah, what's a good midfielder for under 4.5 million for Bruno? There's not really much. Lewis Miley or Potts would be fine. I picked Potts. I had the same decision to make to fund Ekitike in the forward line, so yeah, I think Potts would be the one. Well, I did mention Cunha a few times as an option to replace Bruno Fernandes. It's not that I'm not interested in him, but he hasn't been great all season. And whilst he scored a goal against Brighton and Aston Villa, the goals have been few and far between. And I would expect him to score more over Christmas and going into the new year. But you've also got Declan Rice, who is so consistent. You've got Bruno Guimaraes. And for those that don't have Foden or Saka, I think they are great replacements for Bruno Fernandes. On top of that, you've got Gordon and Rodgers, who are showing great form. Antoine Semenyo is the highest scoring midfielder. So there are plenty of options going around, and Cunha's not the only one. Hi, mate. Would you take out Bruno for a -8? Cunha, Gordon, or Wirtz? I would only take out Bruno for a -8 if you are struggling to field a starting 11 and you feel like your bench cover isn't great. And look, even if it's a defender like Matty Cash or whatever it is, I'd maybe rather just go for that instead of taking an extra hit to sell Bruno Fernandes. But I do like the midfielders you're mentioning. Wirtz is also worth the consideration, but I'm still looking at Rice and all these different midfielders I just mentioned, Semenyo, Rodgers, etc. I think Rodgers is maybe a little bit out of reach in terms of the fixtures. So buying him now might be a little bit too late, and we're essentially chasing last week's points, or today's points, if you will. So it depends on the context with this question, but if you have good squad depth, I would say no. wait another week and sell Bruno Fernandes in 19. Why do you recommend not selling Semenyo? He hasn't had good returns, excluding the last two. Well, he's coming into a bit of form. As you just said, he is returning the last two, 16 points in 2 matches there. And Brentford away is a decent fixture. I also think Semenyo is a talismanic figure. And people have bigger priorities and bigger fires to put out, like Bruno Fernandes. So for people who have both of them, I just don't really see the need to sell Semenyo at this moment in time. Best mid 7 million or less, probably Bruno Guimaraes, but there are other options which I've discussed as well. He's probably my favourite one. Yeah, exactly, only 2 weeks of suspension risk, but it's worth highlighting it anyway because for some people they'll be down to the bare bones and you don't want to have too many suspension risks because otherwise you could then be down to 10 men when just a couple of weeks ago you had 15 players in a great position. Guiu, Fernandes, Saka out for Ekitike, Rice, Cunha for a -4. I'm going to say yes to this. I like the transfers in. Thank you, Harrison James. Cheers, Dylan. Much appreciated. Wishing you and your family a happy and safe holidays. Likewise, the same goes to you and your family and loved ones. I hope you have a great time and enjoy the festivities. Have Saka, Foden and Semenyo. Should I go Bruno to Rice or Rodgers? I'll be honest, I'd lean towards Rice because of the fixtures. Rodgers is facing Chelsea and Arsenal away, and Villa are in the bottom 3 over the next 6 game weeks in terms of the FDR, the fixture difficulty rating. Arsenal aren't great in terms of the rankings there, but long term they are, I think, in the top 2 alongside Newcastle when it comes to fixture quality. Who would you target as a replacement for Bruno between Foden or Cunha? Foden. I still like Cunha. I think he's much more appealing now than he was a couple of weeks ago. But the way I look at it, United not having Bruno Fernandes and Mbeumo on top of Amad Diallo, Cunha will have more responsibilities to score goals. He'll be the talismanic figure offensively, but there's also less service and creativity towards him, so it goes both ways. Quiero fichar a Ekitike, lo cambio por Thiago o Voltemada. Bueno, Thiago hace bastante que no hace un gol, 4 partidos seguidos que hace nada. Voltemada obviamente tiene avisa que está jugando bien en el Carabao Cup y creo que durante los próximos partidos vamos a ver un poquito de rotación y va a haber cambios para Newcastle, pero con Igor Thiago siempre va a jugar, tiene penales, pero a la misma vez creo que Ekitike es una mejor opción y creo que vale la pena vender a Thiago por Ekitike en este momento y yo mantendría a Voltemada. Hey Dylan, what do you think about my team? Would I should I change my team? Sanchez, O'Reilly, Chalobah, Senesi, Foden, Minter, Kluivert, Saka, Rice, Haaland, Ekitike, DCL, Dubravka, Stev, Minter, Reece James. You've got a good squad, but the main problem I've got is Kluivert. He was great last season, particularly at this stage, but I think Kluivert is a sell. So Kluivert to one of Bruno Guimaraes, Cunha, Rodgers, Semenyo. That's what I'd recommend. With the rest, it's looking good. You don't need to change too much, but one thing I would say, in isolation, Sanchez and Chalobah, good picks. The same goes for Reece James on his day, but you've got triple Chelsea defence. I would diversify this a little bit and definitely look at getting an Arsenal defender in if you can. So that could be Chalobah to Hincapié. Just bear in mind that that's very short term and Gabriel could be available in a couple of weeks. You might also want Daniel Munoz when he's back from injury in January. So it might require a restructure from your end. So doing something like Kluivert to a budget midfielder like Wilson and then using those funds to do Chalobah to Gabriel when he's back and then doing something like Reece James to Munoz or even Virgil van Dijk, who I do like for the next 2 game weeks, but I would change up your triple Chelsea defence. That's way too much in my opinion. I think Sanchez would be enough coverage for the Blues and I would sell Kluivert. In terms of the free hit, I'll see if I can do a free hit video. And if not, I'll incorporate it into another podcast like the best wildcard team. But I did this for my deadline stream recently going into Game Week 17. So I still provided that piece of content, albeit in a different way. So if people want to see a free hit video, then let me know. Like this stream. Let's get it to over 100. And also subscribe to the channel. We are closing in on 38k on YouTube. Share, hype, all that good stuff. Let's keep the conversation going. And that includes my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. But yeah, a free hit video could be on the cards for you. If not, it'll be incorporated into the best wildcard team. If you do not go Rodgers as a direct replacement, where else would you go? Declan Rice, Cunha, Gordon, Antoine Semenyo. I think Rice and Semenyo would be the most likely, but yeah, some people are thinking the kind of opposite way in terms of selling Semenyo rather than buying him in, which I get. Start the new year with bench boost in Gimmick 20. That's very team dependent, to be fair, but we do have plenty of doubles and blanks after Gimmick 30. My advice is to save the chips for that period. Now, you can't use all of those chips in doubles and blanks necessarily, so you might have to use one of those boosters, if not two of them, in single game weeks. But yeah, I think probably wait. Instead of just thinking, oh, new year, new resolution, I'm going to get like 100 plus points and a 20 plus point bench boost. It doesn't always work that way, but it is team dependent, of course. And maybe in your situation, a bench boost looks very appealing. Thank you, Banjo. Good to see you. Merry Christmas to you, Dylan, the best pundit for FPL and UCL content. Thank you very much. Very kind words from you, and all the best to you and your family. Enjoy the Christmas period and the new year. So, yeah, hopefully you have a great week. Hey, Dylan, Burn to Keane, Bruno to Rice, Thiago to Ekitike, free transfers. Looks solid. Branthwaite is always nearing a return, so the Keane transfer could be short-lived, but whilst Branthwaite is injured, I think Keane is the best way of covering Everton defensively. I think Declan Rice is a superb choice to replace Bruno Fernandes, so you won't find me complaining about that one. And Thiago has been very poor over the past 4 game weeks, and Ekitike is in fantastic form with 5 goals over the last 3 matches, so I do like that transfer as well. I'd go for it, to be quite honest with you, but there are other defenders to consider instead of Keane. But I think for the short term at least, he's a good purchase. Thank you to Stepaki as well. Happy Christmas, everyone. I have a working car and internet now, so don't have to spend Christmas watching a candle. Hope you all have a good one. That's great to hear, Twisted Parky, and hopefully you have a good FPL game week and also a great time with your family and friends throughout Christmas. And yeah, at least it's onwards and upwards for you and your car and internet, because I know you had some issues with the broadband yesterday. Thank you, mate. I really appreciate your help. Thank you, Dryhill. It's always good talking to you, a long-time viewer of the channel. And thank you to Desasa. Hopefully I've said that right. I also have Dewsbury Hall, who could need replacing. Yeah, I had him on my wild card. We all know how that turned out. I sold him last Monday for Harry Wilson, and I think Dewsbury Hall will be available fairly soon. Based on what David Moyes said before the Arsenal game, it seems like he's not too far away from a return, but he was definitively ruled out for Gimmick 17. I think he'll be back by Gimmick 18 or 19, personally. Good night as well, Baraf. Good to see you. John Snyder says, pick 1. Bruno Fernandes out for Ekitike, Potts for a hit. Or number 2, Bruno Fernandes to Wirtz, no hit. Well, Wirtz looked very impressive against Tottenham, to be fair, but I'm going to go for the Ekitike route with a hit. The only downside to that is you are removing an option from your bench, which could be to your detriment in certain game weeks, especially with multiple injuries, suspensions, and rotation, which we typically see in December, and particularly at this time of year with the quick turnarounds. But I think Ekitike is going to start most games for Liverpool, whilst Isak is out injured, and that could be for several weeks. He's also in great form. And to be honest with you, I'm very tempted to captain Ekitike against Wolves at home. Evening, Dylan. News on Fernandes. Glad but lucky not to have him. What are your thoughts on selling Saka? I would only sell Saka if you can make massive upgrades elsewhere, because in isolation, I think Saka is one of the best midfielders, especially over the Christmas period with Bruno Fernandes out injured. So I'm going to have this quote up. Just give me a second here. Let's go to Twitter and show you what Fabrizio Romano relayed, because this is from Ruben Amorim. So it's a soft tissue, so it's going to take a while. We have to cope. We will find solutions. So essentially, Ruben Amorim has confirmed that Bruno Fernandes is going to be out for a while. This will likely be for a couple of weeks. There is no specific time frame just yet, but as some viewers of the channel have pointed out, typically these sort of problems and injuries are between 3 to 8 weeks to recover from. So yeah, Bruno Fernandes will be out for Game Week 18. That goes without saying. We never see him subbed off, especially in such a big game like that. So that's a massive blow for United and our FPL teams. Maybe not yours. But yeah, in terms of selling Saka, I would keep him if possible. But something like Saka to Rice and then using those funds to do something like Jimenez to Ekitike, I'd definitely be on board with that. How about Thiago, Bruno Fernandes, Dewsbury Hall out, Ekitike, Foden, Lewis Miley in, have 4 free transfers? I'm going to say yes to this. I did something similar last week, and I'm not going to tell you now otherwise. But Dewsbury Hall should be available for Game Week 18 or 19, so that's not a long-term injury. But Bruno Fernandes is a different story. And I think Thiago is still a decent forward to have, but yeah, Ekitike is probably the most appealing forward besides Erling Haaland right now. Hey Dylan, I have Tavernier, Rice, Foden, Bruno Fernandes and Bruno G. Who would you recommend I replace Bruno Fernandes with? Cunha? I like Saka as well, but of course you've got Rice already. You might not have enough money to afford Bukayo Saka anyway. I think Cunha would be one of the standouts for you, but there's also Antoine Semenyo, Morgan Rogers, but I think timing is also very important. And with Aston Villa facing Chelsea and Arsenal away next, I think it's a bit awkward to buy Morgan Rogers right now. So I think in your situation, I would look at either Semenyo or Matheus Cunha. Welcome, Beardy. Good to see you as always. And let's go back to my FPL squad, which isn't looking great at the moment, but there was a lot of green arrows and hard work done over the last couple of months. But yeah, the last 2 game weeks have been a bit disappointing. Knight says, cheers, Dylan. What do you think of this? Mark Guiu, Bruno Fernandes, Saka out for Ekitike, Rice, Cunha for a -4. I will still have Thiago this way. I like that. The kind of opposite, or the counter argument to that is, as much as having squad depth is important, particularly at this time of year, there are cases where you can have too much squad depth, where you've got Thiago, you've got Ekitike, Rice, Cunha, and you've got Haaland and all these other forwards and midfielders, and you have to bench one of them every single week. But I do like what you're saying here on paper, without knowing the context of the rest of your team. I do like that -4 hit. Every single purchase you're making looks very promising, particularly Ekitike and Rice, and I think Cunha could be a decent short-term punt at least, but I have some concerns about United without Mbeumo, Ahmad and Bruno Fernandes. There could be a lack of creativity, and I think the supply to Cunha might not be that great. Best defender under 4.7 other than Anderson and Keane. There aren't many standouts, to be honest. I mean, I would have said Van Heck before this game week, but of course he missed out. You might want to look at an Aston Villa option, but I'm just not a massive fan. They don't really give you DEFCON, goals or assists. I think Cash is the best of a bad bunch, but he's a bit more expensive than 4.7 now. I think short-term Nathaniel Klein still at 3.8 million, but with him being subbed off early, we could even see Borna Sosa starting Game Week 18 and Palace going for something a little bit different, but yeah, I think at 4.7 and below, there isn't really much, and that's why I kind of settled for Joachim Andersen. I'm not a massive fan of him, to be quite honest with you. So I think Ballard might be the standout if you are willing to start a Sunderland defender week in, week out. I think Ballard is the best 4.7 million defender or under. Hey, Charmy says, thanks. Precisely that exact upgrade of Raul Ekitike I'm looking at. I did that in Game Week 17, so it's a very common theme right now, and I get why people are doing it. Are Man United assets now in a void? I think for the most part, yes. The only one I'd consider is Matheus Cunha, but I'm not as bullish on him as others are. Thank you as well to Dance Museum, if I can say that. No, it's Musen. Yeah, not Museum. The Rodgers fixture's putting me off. Yes, I agree. Gordon bench is annoying. Well, possible. Already have Semenyo, Foden and Saka, so a straight single transfer is tricky. Cunha's a worry just because I see United's form dropping. That's where Declan Rice could come into play, but you might have 3 Arsenal players already. Bruno Guimaraes is solid, but he's also, like Semenyo, a suspension risk, but of course that's only going to last for a couple more match days. That's where Florian Wirtz could come in for some people, but I still have my doubts about that. Yeah, Bruno out and the AFCON players unavailable. Mazraoui, Amad Diallo and Mbeumo. United will really struggle, I think, over the next couple of game weeks, even though they have some promising fixtures. Well, usually I'd say wait, and to be honest, I don't think there's any risk of a price change regarding Saka or Bruno Fernandes. I did go through them earlier though, so feel free to rewind the stream and also go to the website livefpl.net and check out their predicted prices section. But I'd maybe wait a little bit just in case. But based on what I've seen and what Ruben Amorim said, I think Fernandes will be out for a while and Saka is a great replacement for him. Besides Foden, I think Saka is the best replacement for Bruno Fernandes. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense to do it now. Thank you, Raul. Good to see you as always. Richards is 4.5 million. Not as tempting as he was, but below 4.7, he is the only one I see. Yeah, fair point. I just think with Palace, I mentioned Klein, of course, but yeah, I think Gay would be my favourite Palace defender long-term until Munoz is back from injury. But yeah, probably Richards or Ballard for me. to answer that question. Of course, there is Michael Keane, who I do prefer over Anderson, but Branthwaite, when he returns, will be the main starter alongside Tarkowski, but he's very injury prone, so Keane will get plenty of opportunities to start this season, and we've seen that happen over the past year or two. So thank you, everyone. It has been a blast talking to you for the past couple of hours. If you haven't already, you know the drill by now. Like this stream. Let's get it to over 100 overall. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell and all that good stuff. Share the stream. Also, hit the hype button on the YouTube app. And check out my Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Dylan RCM. There's my Discord server, the FPL and FPL Challenge Leagues, and Spotify. Leave a 5-star review on Spotify as well. It goes a long way to boosting us up in the algorithm. You can also find me on Reddit and all these different platforms. And yeah, check out my Patreon and the championships. A big up to all the members, patrons, super chatters, and those that have gifted memberships over the past couple of months. You're massively appreciated. And also throughout the last couple of years, everyone who has supported the channel has made great contributions towards the growth. And we are closing in on new goals like 38k on YouTube. So I'll see you very soon. The plan will be to do a deadline stream, of course, on Boxing Day. We only have one game there between Man United and Newcastle. And then hopefully I can do a reaction stream for you on the following day. That would be on the 27th, but I'll keep you posted on that. And in the meantime, there's going to be a transfer tips video for Gameweek 18, the best wildcard squad, my team selection. And if you want to see a predicted lineups, best free hit squad, or different piece of content, then let me know in the comment section, in the live chat, and let's keep the conversation going. Thank you, FPL Devilbird. Thanks for the stream, Dylan. Catch you on the next one. The same goes to you and to everyone watching. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and hopefully you enjoy the festivities with your family and loved ones. Thank you, H-Army. I appreciate it. Raul says, best striker on the 6 million for bench boost selling Guiu. Right now, there's no doubt that Calvert-Lewin is the most appealing. He has scored in 5 consecutive games. We know how Calvert-Lewin can be. Very disappointing and underwhelming, frustrating, but he's got good underlying numbers, comparable to Ekitike. In fact, even better than the Frenchman. But yeah, I think there's no doubt right now that Calvert-Lewin is the best 6 million forward or under, and he could rise in price tonight, as covered earlier. H-Army says, Boxing Day deadline sucks. Will I have to do my transfers Christmas Eve? Yeah, it's a bit annoying, especially because there's only one game, and usually we get so many matches on Boxing Day, and we get some high-scoring thrillers. It's not going to be the case this time round. I think a lot of us would have preferred a deadline on the 27th, but it is what it is. We work with what we get there. Thank you, Nighthawk. Merry Christmas to you as well. The same goes to everyone else watching. Drop a like as well, even on your way out. It does go a long way. I hope Rudolph does not get some more points at Christmas. Yeah, I think we all do. That's a good point. And hopefully we don't get too drunk. That's going to be very important as well. So yeah, even for those watching on the playback, I appreciate the support, and we will get to over 100 likes very soon. So I do appreciate all the comments, all the support to the channel as well. And as I mentioned a few times now, this might sound repetitive, but have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. That's all we can do at this point. There are more questions coming in still. Aliston Fernandes says, hi Dylan, did Saka to Rice, Mateta to Bowen, and Thiago to Ekitike for a -4? Should I take a -8 to sell Bruno Fernandes or just play Bruno G from the bench? I would just play Bruno Guimaraes, even though there are certainly some midfielders who look appealing for Gameweek 18 and beyond. But is it worth taking the hit? I think I just start Bruno Guimaraes, even though he's facing Man United on Boxing Day. But that's my current take. I will answer more questions in the upcoming deadline stream, and there are more videos headed your way for Gameweek 18 and beyond. Take care, enjoy the football. We'll see what happens tomorrow between Fulham and Nottingham Forest. And once again, enjoy the festive season and going into the new year with your family and loved ones. And I'll catch you very soon for more FPL content.